Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Jesse Dodd and Dan Marr, and everyone who has put the time in to make this happen. It is really an honor to be a speaker amongst so many talented and knowledgeable presenters. We really feel blessed to be a part of this regenerative family of farmers. And I just quickly would like to thank my wife Blair for my work partner and life partner for helping to make this happen, and take my scattered ideas and put them into a structured presentation. And she was also the artist behind the PowerPoint presentation, helped me with that too. So thank you, Blair. So the title of this discussion is Biodynamics in Regenerative Culture. Biodynamics coming from the insights of Austrian-born philosopher and scientist Rudolf Steiner. Scientist, artist, seer. He was prolific in his life, and everything that he did was in service to humanity and came from a place of bringing renewal to modern conventions: medicine, education, economics, art, architecture. Agriculture actually happened at the end of his life. Within the year, he wasn't with us. And these renewals that he brought were spiritual renewals. And this is what I just kind of want to, we talk about biodynamics, and there's a lot of things that you do with it, but I just wanted to bring this into the conversation. You just kind of say the word, spirit. It's all around us. It's what's, and so we're trying to understand that. We just want to have a conversation around it. And to do that, to understand matter, we're trying to understand the forces behind it. And of course, as you'd imagine, he gave us help with that, different guided meditations and things that can help us, as well as the practical applications of biodynamic farming. So above all this is the picture and the mood of soul required to see that. And we learn that subtly it's a living picture that's fluid and ever-changing in our mind. So how can we talk about that? Let's give an example. When we have a picture of our farm, we think about it in our mind. We can't really have a snapshot of our farm from season to season, from day to day. It's a different scenario. So here, this is the same field, summer and fall, two totally different things, but it's the same place. And the whole world goes through these same changes. We all experience them together. Another quick example would just be the image of a plant. The seedling is not the same as a flowering plant. So a seedling is not the full story. What this does is kind of just point to the fact that there's a dialogue going on between us humans and the living world. And on the way down, I was thinking about it. The plants, in a sense, don't really have a choice. We influence them. We bring the seeds in the fall. But if we were to leave the seeds out in the field, as the seasons come on, the warmth comes back, they germinate, sprout, and go forth to produce seed again. It's an external thing that influences them. So when we're speaking about biodynamics, we're of course talking about the lecture cycle that Steiner gave in 1924, which was originally entitled The Spiritual Foundations for the Renewal of Agriculture. And kind of my hope here is just to compel people to look further into the work of Steiner. It's all relevant to the farmer, and in fact, it makes the agriculture course more interesting and provides a very big background. When he was lecturing, all before this, farmers were in the audience. He was speaking to artists and farmers and doctors the whole time. So this isn't really a how-to direction for farming, more so I feel that Steiner and biodynamics are assets to the farmer and anyone working in the land, because they shift our perspective from a microscopic view of what we're doing to more of a macroscopic look, sitting back and looking at all the broad influences that we encounter. So as we work with our piece of this earth, getting to know it more intimately in all its expressions throughout the year, we can kind of begin to compelled to ask ourselves how we fit into the larger cosmic drama. Every year, as growers, I feel like we evolve as people, as a community, learning through our successes and failures, and we can't help but think this must surely have a farther-reaching effect to ourselves and the world. And we begin to feel that our understanding of ourselves as it relates to each other in our land begins to feel like an intuitive process where we think more with our heart than with our head. And we begin to see that it is impossible to separate our work, the practices we employ, and the thoughts we carry into the garden from the world in which we live. Our picture of how the world works and how we farm and garden are intimately related. And this is something I've actually felt very strongly this past year. So if I may, I'd just like to share with you some ideas from the doctor that I've been ruminating on and that I feel are of particular interest to people working with the land. And I don't want to get too involved with like the overreaching cosmic evolution that Steiner taught, but I recommend you check it out and its implications. It's hard to see from where you are, but there's a series of rounds that happen in patterns of 7, where we are on the lower right-hand side over there. We're in the 5th post-Atlantean epoch. And in this time, where we are, our minds are understanding our environment through the mineral realm. We see and interact with the world on a mineral realm. It's a subtle thing that's in the back of our mind. If we just go back one. I realized this a few days ago. We were in a series of discussions, and the concept of the 7th generation kept coming up. And I was like, wow, in Steiner's cosmology, it's all 7s, right? It's a circular number where 4 in the middle doesn't repeat, but the 3 and 3 on each side, a pendulum swing, it revolves around. And when you see a coincidence like that of indigenous culture wisdom and European wisdom coming together, 7s is great. I just wanted to point that out, so thank you. So in this lecture cycle where that diagram was, in 1908 on the apocalypse, talk about the apocalypse here, he said this: what can man comprehend today? That's the point. He can today only understand the mineral kingdom. As soon as he comes to the plant kingdom, he no longer understands it. The mineral kingdom he can understand. From the forces of the mineral kingdom, he can construct houses, machines, and so on. When he comes to learn in the same way, to observe what the forces are in a plant which make it grow tall, only this will lift him with his consciousness into the plant kingdom. And he went on to predict in 1908 that one day humans will produce plant forms and still higher things in the laboratory without resorting to seeds, without having to call to his aid forces of nature unfamiliar to him. And he continued that nothing of value or life-giving will be produced until the laboratory table has become an altar and the mixing of chemical substances a sacramental act, saying, for into the living being flows, when it is put together, something which is in the man himself. If the man were a villain, what was villainous would flow across, and the being produced would be an expression of villainy. And it would seem to me that you can draw a straight line from this expression to certain chemical industries. So, what happens when we get into the plant consciousness, plant kingdom? He says, today, man lives in such a way that the individual, even if he does not acknowledge it, is convinced that it is possible for a person to be happy, although his neighbor may be unhappy. When man is in the plant kingdom, he will have reached a stage of evolution morally at which it will be impossible to feel happy as an individual if others of his kind are unhappy. The happiness of the individual is inseparably connected to the happiness of all. So, I really believe that biodynamics and regenerative agriculture is a movement that is taking us from the mineral mindset into plant consciousness, because they are moral ways of working with the land. So instead of isolating and synthesizing for specific compounds, we utilize plants that we know contain the elements we're after. We give thanks for them, we honor them, nurture them, and the soil from which they grow. So these are two different things. There's a cold, isolating, synthesizing, and then a warm, embracing kind of cultivation of inclusivity. And so we begin to feel that each plant has a specific expression and gesture, which helps us to understand the elements that it's made up of. So when we live into the expression of the growth of a plant, we're entering, again, a living picture. The plant is a living picture existing in the natural world outside us. Yet as humans, we're able to internalize this process and form a living picture inside our own head. And for Steiner, this is really where it was at, saying that being able to do that is one of the things that separates us from all the different beings that we coexist with. And I believe as farmers, this is something that we can utilize, being that we engage with plant life on a daily basis. So one that we could actually work on, just do together, would be a plant meditation, where it's suggested in many biodynamic circles to take the image of a plant, starting from the seed through its life cycle to seed again. So, if we want to, we could close our eyes and picture a seed in the dark soil, sprouting, throwing its radical root down, first coming up with the cotyledons, the seed leaves, then the first true seeds, and begin to feel how that will repeat itself as the plant strives upward into the airy element, into the light, and into the warmth until it gets met by the fire spirits and is fertilized in the ash that is the seed. And we've come full circle. Now the key would be to then from there work your way backwards. It's easy to go forward, but to bring that backwards in a very interesting way helps us to deepen our connection to the growth process. That obviously is a meditation where we're dealing with an annual. It should be done and can be done with other plants as well, perennials and trees, but the annuals have a very unique and direct connection with the cycle of the year that is particularly helpful. As farmers and growers, people working with the land, you may have all felt this in the past, but it's very helpful to have a scientist as an ally to help you with various questions that come up. And it's better if you can have a cool scientist on your side. And I just want to reiterate, Steiner was a cool scientist that I'm really hopeful some of you will be compelled to look into what he offered us 100 plus years ago. It's hard to convey how influential and accomplished of a person he was in so many areas, but one of his major reasons for being was establishing a school of spiritual science that was to be a legitimate science alongside the other natural sciences. And so, from what I understand, in the natural sciences where we study matter, there's 3 proofs of existence, which would be weigh, measure, and count. If it's to be real and if it's to be to exist, you need to be able to weigh it, measure it, and count it. Spiritual science, on the other hand, was essentially the study of forces. These are invisible. So you can see the odds that he would have been up against in the world of science. But he did offer an alternative to these 3 proofs, which are levity, rhythm, and quality. So the quote from earlier referenced this, saying that when one understands the forces that make a plant grow tall, we will be furthering ourselves in our evolution. So what makes a plant strive upwards? How does the water get to the top of the redwood? Levity. What makes a plant know when to sprout or when to flower? Rhythm. What's more important? Thousands of pounds of commodity produce or flour with no nutritional or medicinal value, or quality, nutrient-dense food and medicine? Quality. It's a subtle shift, but given time, it really becomes something of substance, and it really makes sense. I find that to make sense. So, just want to share one more meditation that I find is a very helpful tool on the land, and that's the blue sky meditation. In biodynamics, we talk of etheric forces and astral forces. The mineral world is made up of a mineral body. The plant world is made up of a mineral body and an etheric body. The animals are made up of a mineral body, an etheric body, and an astral body. We all have those, plus an ego, the part of us that makes us able to say I. When we go to sleep, the ego and astral body go out to the cosmos, and what you have left in the bed is very much like a plant. The etheric body is from the world outside of, but it exists within us. And it's said that it comes closest to humanity in a blue sky. The sky is blue because of the etheric world. So if you can position yourself in a way in the garden, stare up at the sky, just see nothing but blue, and just ponder that. It's really fun to do, especially, after some sun grown. I'm hustling. I want to change gears and make a plug for a book, Mycorrhizal Planet. Michael Phillips just came out with it last year, the year before. He's a holistic orchardist, land steward, Steiner guy. It's really great. And in this book, he illustrates how the imaginative picture-forming process led to many discoveries that farmers could work with. Steiner was talking about mycelium before we really knew what it was doing. People thought it was a parasite. A quote from the doctor from lecture 4 is, "For many plants, there is absolutely no hard and fast line between the life within the plant and the life of the surrounding soil in which it is living." This is after he was talking about the trunk of a tree, where trees are actually earth mounded up. It's the force piling the soil up, and the plant form of a tree is actually just where it's leafing out. In lecture 5, he goes on to say, "Treat the soil of the earth as I have now described, and the plant will be prepared to draw things to itself from a wide circle. Your plant will then benefit not only by what is in the tilled field itself, whereon it grows, but also by that which is in the soil of the adjacent meadow or of the neighboring wood or forest." That's mycelium right there. So I was going to give a little quick thing about the preps that you use in biodynamics. 500 horn manure, cow manure in a horn, buried in the fall, bring it up, spread it all over your field in diluted amounts. You can see how it's just covered in mycelium. The next one, 501, is quartz crystal. Crush it up as fine as you can, put it in mix it with some water, make a paste, put it in a horn, bury it throughout the summer, and that's your striving upwards pole. 500 is your earthly pole. You spray this over your plants before, like around the time of ripening, and you're getting a good harmonious balance there. The other ones are all compost preps, herbs and bark. They have their significant vessels that you put them in, and then you can add them to your compost pile, and it helps to steer the decomposition chaos that goes on in your pile. The way I was hoping to bring this full circle was to turn to another lecture cycle that the doctor gave half a year before the Ag Lectures. This is in 1923, Manna's Symphony of the Creative Word, or Harmony of the Creative Word. He says, "The plant world is the mirror of human conscience, an external nature. Nothing more poetical can be imagined than the thought of this voice conscience, which in us comes forth as though from a single point, distributed over the many kinds of flowers that speak to the soul during the seasons of the year in the most manifold ways. The plant world reveals itself as the outspread mirror of conscience if we know how to look at it right." Now, I know we must all feel this to some degree as we go out there and work with the land. And we develop gratitude and awe for creation, and cultivates what I believe is the heart force that we will need moving forward. And cannabis is an amazing force for that. It has mobilized more people to be land stewards, small scale, caring for their particular piece of land with passion, to be producers in a sea of consumers, rejecting the idea of corporate farms and agribusiness as usual. We understand that the model set by the Creator is sacred, in the ground, under the sun. We owe this and much more to this plant. And in this process, we have become sensitive to the way in which the quality of the care throughout cultivation shows itself in the quality of the medicine. And I believe with this mood of soul and with these eyes, it'll help lead us in a direction of how we can care for each other. and regenerating social constructs. We feel a great deal to the regenerative cannabis movement. Feels like a family, and we're all connected to each other by our thoughts, very much like mycelium in the soil. And to finish it out, I wanted to share a poem from Harmony of the Creative Word. To find and know yourself, look all around you in the world. To find and know the world, look into all the depths within yourself. Thank you.